Hello, this is Professor Michael. I wanted to do a quick little video about how to do a database design for your project due this Sunday by 11:59 p.m. I've had a lot of questions about what kind of a database design should I do, what are you expecting to see, and really all I want to know is that you understand database design concepts. I want to make sure you understand how to organize a table, what the columns are, what the relationships are, and how you can diagram that in a database design just on paper, just to get the information out there. You don't need to do it in a special application used for database design, and you don't have to use SQL Server. So I'm going to do something that's similar to your assignment, but not exactly. Here you'll see I have a text, this is TextPad, but I just have the bare minimum requirements: design a database for an application that will store information about pets, employees, and customers. This is for a pet spa application that will register pets for appointments. So just basic requirements. There's a lot of different ways to interpret that, and I'm okay with you coming up with slightly different database designs based on your interpretation of the requirements. So I'm going to take this and say, okay, I probably need some information about pets. So let me just do this in the text document here. So I have pets. What kind of information describes pets? I'm going to say a name, right? And maybe a breed. I may also want to know who the pet's owner is. I also need to know about the customers, the humans. So customers, what kind of information? I'm going to need a name, maybe an address if I'm going to bill them, phone number so I can contact them, and let's say that's it for now. And then employees. This is going to have some kind of a transaction system in it. So I'll want to know which employee performed the transaction. So probably not just name. Usually employees have some kind of ID that they enter into a system, some kind of unique identifier. And that leads me to think about a primary key. So for a table, I need to have a unique record, so I'm going to make the ID a primary key. And so this can be auto-generated, just a number, but don't worry about that. Just know that it has to be unique because it's the primary key. And I'm going to say that this data type, so let's think about data type for a minute. This data type is going to be an integer, or if this could get very large, it could be a big int. I'm going to go with big int to be safe, and it's the primary key. The name, let's think about data type for a minute here for a name. The data type is probably going to be a varchar, a string. It's going to be a series of characters, right? So we could go through all of the columns and determine the data type, but let's think about the data that we have so far before we go too far into that. So with pets, I'm going to need to know which owner is owning this pet. So here I have owners and here I have customers. So these are probably related. If I have a customer, he or she has a pet. So let's think about this relationship for a minute. We could go with a foreign key here in pets. Let's go with that for now. So if this is the foreign key, then it has to relate to customers somehow. And these tables' name is probably not a good identifier. People can have the same name. June Jones. So let's put an ID here. That will be the primary key as well. And that'll just be auto-generated a number. Same as employees. And let's say that this owner is the foreign key and it relates to the customer table, the ID there. So then we know that we have a relationship between pets and customers. So let's think about what the system really does now. Is this all the information we need? And this is probably going to need some kind of a transaction. So If I have a pet spa application that somebody is going to register pets in the pet spa, then I need to know each individual transaction, what happens. So I'm going to create just a registration transaction table. So here I'm going to have an ID because there's nothing really unique about the transaction. We can make it transaction ID as well. There's nothing different about the name. You just need to know that that's a primary key because that's unique. And then this needs to relate to the employee who did it and the customer and the pet. So let's relate it to employee ID. So we'll make employee ID, this will be the foreign key. And this will relate to, oops, cannot type, employees.id. We also need to relate to the customers or the pets somehow. So customer, let's change that. I don't like using S's actually in my table names because of this. Just sounds better to me. It's a convention, not required. So customer ID is a foreign key that relates to customer.id, and since I changed this table name, let's go ahead and change this to employee.id. So this tells me the table.column name. So we could also add pets and pet ID, but pet and customer are already related, so can you get to the pet if you know the customer? And if we had a rule that said the customer can only have one pet, so there's a relationship from pet to customer. If we only have one pet per customer, then that's true. It's a one-to-one, and so that would be okay. But in a real-world situation, you're going to have a customer who has more than one pet. So that makes me think about this relationship. I may want to change this. This would give me a many-to-many, where I would have many pets for many customers. And in the situation where you have a many-to-many relationship, you need some kind of a table in between to relate this one customer to this one pet. So I'm going to put in a pet customer table because I want to allow a customer to have more than one pet. I'm going to relate this pet customer table to customer and to pet. So here I'm going to have customer ID, and this is a foreign key, relates to customer.id, and then I'm going to have a pet ID, which makes me think that I need an ID here because, again, the name's not good because it could be duplicated. I'll have a bunch of Fidos in there. So I need a unique key. So this is a foreign key that relates to pet.id. So what this will do is, for a customer in this table, they will have to have a record in this table, so their customer ID here, and it relates to a pet ID. And so if a customer has more than one pet, they will have more than one record in the pet customer table, but it will only relate to one record in the customer table and one record in the pet table, which gives me exactly the amount of data that I need. So here, if I'm going to relate the registration transaction table, I will want to know which customer ID is actually performing the transaction. It makes more sense that a customer would be involved in a transaction than a pet. So then I have customer ID there. So really, that's all I need to do. I need to go through and figure out the data types for everything, but we did that in this table here. So I just need to kind of check it. Go through a couple of scenarios. It helps to think about if your design's okay or not. So let's go through a scenario. So scenario one might be that, let me imagine this pet spa application. So a customer comes in with a pet and they want a pet spa treatment. So the employee creates a new customer, sorry about my dog, and a new pet, and creates a new transaction for the customer. So what happens in that scenario? So I go into the application. Now we're not designing the application, we're just designing the back end of the database. So what kind of data do we need? There would have to be a way to get access to add a brand new pet. So when you add the pet, you need to know the name, the breed, and the owner. And when you create a customer, you would need to know the name, the address, and the phone number, and which pet he or she belongs to. So when you put that data in, can you put it in without violating any of the restrictions? So the restriction here for pet customer would be that once I have a record in this table, I need to have a record in the pet table and a record in this table. And since I left this foreign key here, I'm going to remove that. We don't need that anymore because we have the pet customer table. So yeah, let's see. If I add a customer, okay, I can add a customer all by himself. The ID will be auto-generated, so it'll be unique. And then I have a pet table. I can add a pet. Great. And then when that happens, I will need to make sure that we add in the back end this pet customer record, and then we'll relate to both tables. So all's well there. When I do a transaction, here I will have an auto-generated transaction ID, and then I will need to already have the employee in the system and a customer already in the system because I have foreign keys that relate to those tables. So it seems good. So you could go through a couple more scenarios there to just check your design. So if all that you did was put in all of the data types, so separate it somehow, doesn't matter. Data type equals big int because I want to prepare for growth, and it's a primary key. And then name, have varchar, and breed would be the same. Another thing that I could do with breed is if I want to ensure that they don't just enter in any kind of breed, if I want to standardize it, so if somebody is a Maltese, right? I don't want to have capital N, I don't want to have misspellings. I could have another table here. This is just kind of additional. That would be a breed table. And so we could have an ID, or if we only allow uniques here, we could have name as the primary key because it would just list all of the breeds. We don't really need any other information there. So this could actually be pointing to that breed table. So if we have, let's see here. So if we have a foreign key that relates to breed.name, then we ensure that they only have the breeds that we want them to have for a pet in our breed table. So it gives you some kind of way to kind of search and report on that data later. And then we have owner here. We don't need owner anymore because we have this pet customer table to relate to the customer. So we're going to get rid of owner. So that's all we have for pet. Here for name, this is going to be a varchar. With primary keys and foreign keys here, you have to have, if you have a foreign key that relates to a primary key in another table, that data type has to be exactly the same. For pet customer, we have customer ID. It's a foreign key. It relates to customer ID. Great. And we have a pet ID, but we don't have a primary key, and we need a primary key. So we could just add an ID here as well, but we're never going to use that. And the customer ID and pet ID would have to be unique because we can only have one pet to one customer that would be unique. So a customer can have many pets, but one pet ID can only belong to one customer. So we're going to say that, you can just type this, primary key is a composite key of customer ID and pet ID. Okay. So then we want to make sure that these data types, since they're foreign keys, are exactly the same as the data types in the the table that it relates to. So this would be a big int, because my customer.id will be a big int. Let's change this. I didn't mean to put a space in between big int. Okay, so this pet ID will also be a big int, because it's a big int in pet ID. Now, the other thing is that this name for the foreign key can be anything you want it to be. It doesn't have to be table underscore name of column. So this can actually be pet pet ID or pet in pet table ID. That's a bad column name, because usually you want to follow a convention that says the table name underscore ID, but I just want you to know that it doesn't matter. It doesn't take that column name and figure out which table it's in. It's how you create the foreign key that tells you that. So here we have just a varchar. This could be a varchar. Now you can break up address. If address should be street address, and then you could have city, and then you can have state, and you can have those in lookup tables where you would have a state table and it could relate to that. I'm going to make this a varchar as well. You can also put formatting on this. You know, do you want the 513, 555? If you want to force that formatting, do you just want numbers? That's up to you. As long as you have a reason for it, it works. And then employee we had already done. So here we have a big int as well. That's my ID. And then this has to be a big int because it relates to the employee table. And this has to be a big int because it relates to the customer table. Now this would be plenty. If you gave me this for your database design, that's great. If you're a visual person and you want to see it visually, you can use any program you want, but it can be as simple as Paint. So let's open up Paint. You can see how awful I am in that I have Windows 7 and not Windows 8 because it's so much better in Windows 8. I just want to use a shape. Let's say I just want to use this, and I'm going to create my tables here. There we go. Have a couple of tables, and then in here I can just write the table. So pet, and then if I wanted to have the column names in a different color, kind of indented, what have you, I can put those in. So that's ID, big int. Let's say I want primary keys in red. So I can do that, and it's a little more visual. Also, if I have, let's put the breed table in. Whoops, it needs to be black. Follow the convention. Here's the breed table, and let's say I'm just going to put in the name here. Oops, varchar. So primary key would be red. And we have other values in the pet table. Oops. So here I want name. I want it in orangey yellow. Here's name, varchar. And I want breed, varchar. Let's do foreign keys in green. Foreign key. We'll just move it down here. And then you might want arrows, right? Relating the tables. So you can do these big awful arrows, or you can do the regular arrows. Let's see. Okay. And so then you can put in your foreign key information here. You can say, you know, pet dot breed and read.name. It gets a little difficult when you're trying to put in a lot of information here. So you have to kind of organize it. But you can do this in any application is what I'm trying to say. And all I want to know is that you understand what's a primary key, what's the best primary key for the table, what are the tables, how should you organize them. We have gotten into not having duplicate data, not having many-to-many relationships without a table in between. We've gotten into a lot of database design concepts in the book, and I just want you to take all of that information and apply it to this simple database design project. So please don't spend your time worrying about how to use an application. Just get the information out there. I think it helps to whiteboard it, draw it on a sheet of paper, and then just put the information in. You could scan it in if you do it on paper and hand that in. So I hope this was helpful. Again, it's due Sunday by 11:59 p.m. and then you need to arrange a meeting with me sometime next week and we'll go through it. Let me know, send me an email, send me a text, give me a call if you need any help. All right, thank you.